Welcome back to my story. My story, episode 3. Where we left you last was in July 12th, thereabouts, of 2005, when I found myself for the first time in a California mine jail in Palm Springs Hospital, where an old man doctor told me, after I offered to buy California, that I should stop drinking, and I thought that was a good idea to cut down. But anyway, they let me out. This is episode 3. This is from July 12th. They let me out on the Ides of March, 3/15/2005. And I went to Circular City, waving $100 bills to people, offering them free cash or an opportunity to invest in the enterprise of the future. That was pretty crazy. And they bought a bunch of freaking a big old Toshiba or some kind of laptop, and then asked the guy that sold it to me if he'd want to come and help me set it up. And he said he would. And he showed up at my door in Indian Wells, and with 2 other friends. I call them the 3 wise kids. His name was Cool Smartass. Well, let's just call him Jeff. The other one was Chris. He had a brain accident, which, well, made him have money because he got money from his brain accident. And then another really heavy-set kid that spent his time playing video games. They came to my house, and I told those 3 wise kids, beware the Ides of March, and remember the D word. Now, I'll tell you the D word now. I can't imagine them remembering, and I can't imagine you knowing what it was. But it was the word and the secret to what I told them was a reverse IPO. When the people of the planet bought the planet out, how could the people of the planet buy the planet out when most of the people have nothing, have less than nothing? Well, we could just see how we could leverage eyeballs and all kinds of people into a new enterprise of Earth. And remember the D word? Well, the D word was the word called disintermediation. See, to make a long story short, my monopoly of monopolies, to plan to monopolize monopolies and then do it for the people of Earth, represented the perfect plan that was unstoppable. I could disintermediate. That means, well, that's what J.C. Penney and Sears did to the retail business at first with the catalog. And then along comes, well, the Sears stores, and then they were out-trumped by Walmarts. And then, well, Walmart's, Kmart's, Kmart's went under. Well, I got bought by Sears. No, Sears bought Kmart. Who knows who bought what? It was all Eddie Lambert. He was one of the guys. See, way back when I established we're getting ahead of the train of the thought, which you might as well understand. If I had a plan to buy the world, who would possibly want me to be in charge of the world? Of course I wouldn't. Why would I have to be in charge of the world? If my plan could buy the world, I should be able to retire again. That should be work enough for me. And so, anyway, that wasn't the point. The point was, to buy the world, you'd need a board of angels. And I chose a board of angels that were already pre-chosen by themselves, pre-chosen by God. Who'd that board of angels be? Well, the board of angels at the time was, well, from the companies, but not all the people that you, well, who knows who you might put with 10 business bulls and 7 political heads. The idea wasn't to like selectively, but I started selecting. But from there, you might imagine the numbers would be many, many more, that a board of all the greatest great men and women on the planet, well, they would rule the planet as an enterprise, working for themselves and working for the people, both. And so, who would be on that board? Well, we must have Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and they can monopolize the technology business with the Google guys. So I put those guys on the board. And guys like Jack Welch, who could teach you how to run across the businesses. And guys like Warren Buffett. Well, because I asked the 3 wise kids, what do you do when you're Bill Gates rich? And he gave it all away for the I put my name in $1 billion back then, but I didn't even want $1 billion. I never needed $1 from the plan. The plan itself was the fulfillment of any man's life, any man, woman, or child. The plan to buy the world was the greatest idea on the planet of the world. And well, that's when the fiction of my reality became stranger than reality. That's when, well, I certainly wondered if I was crazy. Well, anyway, we won't go through the entire business bills, but it had Richard Branson. It had others. Of course, Larry Ellison and the other guy, because he helped me fund the plan. Anyway, and the only political head I named back then was just like a token of how I was going to surround you and disintermediate you, because I could take your nations out. When one of my partners who came later in the game said, "Holy bleep," he used the F word, "we could hold worldwide elections," I knew I could vault you out of the planet. All to lead us, I could take you out because you had no plan. And my plan was irrefutably the plan of mankind and the plan of God. And if you have the plan of God, well, that ties back to the first episode. Do you not prove the existence of God, even if he's imaginary? Do you not prove God if there's a plan to buy the world, heaven on earth, and a future, and justice for all, for 1,000 years? Or let's call it 999. Because I turned your 6s into 9s. At least that's the part of the story. So, let's back to March 15th. So, thereabouts, I started telling the 3 wise kids about my ideas, and I tired them for my enterprise. And all I wanted them to do was load the load of tapes into my high-definition video camera. They didn't even do that very well. But I learned about kids, and kids like to be sick. And the old people I was hanging out didn't want to be sick. And isn't that sort of weird and sick that kids wanted to be sick and that old people didn't want to be sick? What's going on here? Anyway, so those were some of the questions. So, and then after the Ides, I went to Rebecca Darling, I think her name was, for a Palm Springs psychiatrist for a second opinion. Because the first thing since the treatment didn't call me crazy. So I figured if I'm going to create this new massive enterprise, I better get my head checked out. I was not going to run anything, so you were safe there, but I should still get my head checked out. And so, well, she basically didn't give me a description. I basically told her these questions. Actually, I asked these questions because I had the Socratic method to my madness. I asked her, what if I had a plan to create a Google worth like $100 billion really quickly? And I could spend $250,000 of my spare money to do so, to make that plan work. Well, Miss Rebecca Darling, Voss is that darling. She just nods, and gives me a sample bag of Zyprexa. I called her back and said the Zyprexa is slowing my brain. I'm trying to come up with this massive plan. I go back to her office a second time. We discuss the scenario, $100 billion, $250,000. She basically gives me no diagnosis, but presumably, between the lines, says I'm crazy, gives me another bag of Zyprexa. That was no diagnosis. And anyway, I moved on, stopped the Zyprexa, and moved on to my plan. But then after, well, I bought a RAID server from Apple for $50,000. Well, it wouldn't run OS X or Mac, and they had nobody in tech support within 90 miles to service it. So I ended up giving it back, but I knew with a RAID server, which is no more bigger than like what your Power Max, I mean big tower powers, that you could put all the names on the planet on it, that we could create a database of all the people. But see, my plan to disseminate all the enterprises of Earth was to use the people and Amazon the Amazons. But see, the way to Amazon the Amazons is buy them and make them 1,000 times what Amazon is. Faster, advancing the state of our economy by 100 or 1,000. See, if we can advance it by 10 and then another 10, it doesn't take too long, where every 5 years massively changes us by 20 years. We're operating 1,000 years ahead of your plan. maybe by 7. It's crazy how fast we can move with the new enterprise FOSS. And so, that was the craziness that was in my head at the time. But then I backed off. I took back that read server, and I basically told the kids that I couldn't keep hiring them for doing nothing. And I sort of lost the plan because I didn't have. It was a grandiose plan without the connections. But then I called my friend Phil, and I'd already called him in the middle of it, saying I had some big plans. And I didn't have the core of the idea. What was going to be the little, the little thing, the little thing that became bigger, the thing. How was, well, the plan was to take all the wireless networks, to take off the internet. And I needed to find out how to do that. And well, it came to me at the dawn of a conference on wireless technology at Indian Wells, right across the street from where I lived. And I was at that conference, they were discussing the conference and wireless, and I realized I had a plan that was sort of a gestation of a plan in my mind all along. Because see, the fun thing that you want to do in the wireless businesses, there's no money in devices. There's no money in devices. There's no money in devices. I say that repetitively to repeat the point. There's no money in devices. There's money in patents, but with patent wars, there's no money in patents. When you can't, well, you can't afford the war, and it's a big war. And so patents are like trump cards in a big old technology war. So they lose their value because you depreciate them through war and patents. Let's not go into that. Patent guys will understand it. And then the value. So what is the value? Well, the value is in the software and the architecture, and actually it's the value of the control of the customer. And my plan was basically to take over all of the access points and create a people's network by overriding the software and the access points that existed all over the planet and proliferate more, but at the same time make it a part of the network. So I called my friend Phil and I asked him, would you be willing to join my new enterprise? And well, he was interested in joining the enterprise. And I asked him, would you be willing to do the following? Would you limit yourself to a maximum earnings of $1 billion, no matter how much we made? And give all the extra back, if you will, to our enterprise of the people. And he said, oh yes, I'd be happy with just $1 billion. I'll limit myself to $1 billion. And I said, good, then you have 50% of the enterprise. And I so limited myself. But all mine was going to my own charity anyway, so I don't know what that means anyway. So then he says, I got a great technical guy for us. The guy that said, holy bleep, we could hold worldwide elections. Well, he said, I got this great technical guy, Jim. And so I said, well, is he worth giving another $1 billion out? And he says, yes. And we made the same offer to Jim. And Jim agreed to limit it to $1 billion. So we basically had $3 billion with 3 guys with on a third of the enterprise each. My plan was to keep the angel venture capital down to $1 billion or 2, and the new employees, if there weren't anything, to $1 billion or 2. But really, it was a bigger grand plan, so it's hard to wonder whether to start from the little plan up or the big plan across, because the little plan up is just noise to the big plan across that I started in the beginning with the conspiracy. Well, I didn't launch the conspiracy until months later as I was starting the startup. Oh, and Jim basically we'd figured out there was only 2 kinds of chips that ran access points that had 85% of the market. Broadcom and Ethereals. We could make 2 software versions that would lobotomize the software of Broadcom and Ethereals, create our own overlay software, allow secure networking that would keep out the bad shit that people don't want in their home networks, and keep in privacy and security, at the same time opening the extra bandwidth up for sharing by neighbors, and then sharing the profit of that bandwidth sale back to those same customers and access points, and back to the people. See, a network that would take on the AT&Ts and Verizons, because as we built out our network, it would be owned for the people, for the people, and of the people. And, well, we would build out more than a network, but we build out services. And those services would also guarantee the people's customer satisfaction. We would take the wild, wild west of the internet entertainment and offer a